Remember the objection of Romans 11:1? How do we know that God is not rejecting His people? And the reason why we know He's not rejecting His people is because He is saving this people. This is His plan. This is His purpose. So of course He's not rejecting them. This is what He has foreordained to have happen. This keeping for Himself. Then we come to verse 5. In the same way then, there has also come to be at the present time a remnant according to God's gracious choice. So it begins, in the same way then. So this is the whole reason of Paul's argument from 1 Kings 19. I assume he could have picked a myriad of places to go to, but he chose this one because he wants to show us back in this time when God had kept for Himself 7,000 men who had not bowed the knee to Baal. Even though Elijah had it all wrong, because Elijah doesn't know the heart. Elijah thinks he's the only one left. But God's plan and purpose is that 7,000 men not bow the knee to Baal, but be kept for Him. Paul's saying it wasn't an isolated incident back in this time. But just as God has kept men for Himself today, then He's kept men for Himself today. There is still a remnant of believers today, and they're saved in the same fashion. It's not that we have men today that are keeping themselves for God, but God is keeping men for Himself even today. It's an important truth for us to understand. If we're in Christ today, we are kept for God that we might no longer proverbially bow the knee to Baal. This reminds us that we no longer live for the things of this world, but that we live to give allegiance to Christ. We live for God in every moment of our lives. And by knowing that God has always kept a remnant for Himself, and that if you're a believer tonight, you are in amongst that chosen group of people that He has kept for Himself, this tells us at the outset that we can trust God. This is God's work in your life. God has regenerated your heart, and God is at work in your life. And that's an incredibly powerful truth that we know that God is orchestrating the things in our lives. So this brings us into our next point, that God's purposes have not failed because the remnant is chosen by God. So let's read Romans 11:5 one more time. In the same way then, there has also come to be at the present time a remnant according to God's gracious choice. The remnant we've seen was saved from a life of worshiping Baal, and the intention is that they were redeemed to worship God. There's a purpose, right? God wasn't just keeping them from Baal and had no purpose for what to do with them after that. But there was a purpose of, I'm taking you out of this life of idolatry, I'm putting you into this life for me, to serve me. That is the very definition of redemption. Let me try to give you an example of redemption. And I have very bad analogies. Ask my wife. Let's imagine I come home from work. My wife has a coupon for a free Big Mac. So I go to McDonald's and I place my coupon on the counter and I'd say, I'd like to redeem my Big Mac. Now, it makes absolutely no sense if they say, yes sir, absolutely, that'll just take a minute, and I place my coupon down and I leave. That's not redeeming something, right? It's not redeeming something until I take the value of what the redeeming coupon was. So if I place the coupon down and it's for one free Big Mac, I take the Big Mac. Now the Big Mac is in my possession. Okay? All of the components that made up the Big Mac belonged to McDonald's a minute ago. Now it's mine. Now it is mine to do whatever I want with it. I can eat it. I can give it to somebody else. I can hang it from my rearview mirror if I want to. It's mine. I can do whatever I want with it. The principle of redemption is something, it belonged to somebody else. Now it's mine. That is redemption. Now, why do I say all that? Because there is a remnant of believing Jews that have been redeemed out of this life of idolatry and placed into a new life. And how is that done? How were they redeemed? And there's only one way that somebody is redeemed, and it's at the cross of Jesus Christ. That is the only way that any man stands justified before God, is in the blood of Christ. So at the risk of making somebody angry at me today, I'm going to talk about, for a quick minute, who was redeemed at the cross of Jesus Christ. Because there's only three options. There's only three possible things that happened when Jesus Christ died on the cross to save the remnant. We're going to go through the only three ways that there are, and I'm going to tell you why the first two are wrong, and then hopefully nobody gets mad at me. The first possibility of what happened when Jesus Christ died is that on the cross, Jesus Christ died for the sins of the entire world. Everybody who ever lived. I will say that is the common belief system of the unreligious person. Of the complete outsider who might have a thought about Jesus, might have a warm, fuzzy feeling about Jesus. He's like a teddy bear, it's super squishy. They might have an idea that this is what Jesus did. He just loved everybody so much that he's just paid for everybody's sins, and therefore, even the mass murderers of the world, even history's most vile men, their sins are paid for. Even the guy who lived his entire life hating Jesus Christ, his whole life, even his sin is paid for. And in the end, everybody goes to heaven. That's a misconception. And I'll dare to say that 99% of every theologian, I don't care what denomination you are, does not believe that option. There is only a remnant that is saved. That's in our text tonight. So we know biblically, even from just one verse, and it's all over the Scriptures, that that's impossible, that Christ died for everybody. So if it's not all, if Christ hasn't died for everybody, then there's really only two options that are left. And here's the second option. On the cross, Jesus Christ paid for most of the sins of all of the people. Now, this is when we get into a case like this. You get the people that believe that Jesus Christ loved the entire world enough that he paid for most of the sins of the entire world, and he has offered what is called prevenient grace. Meaning, he has kind of given you most of it, but it really comes down to your decision. How do these people get saved? Well, the emphasis isn't placed on the cross so much anymore. It's like you're drowning in the middle of the ocean and you can't swim, and Christ picked you up and dumped you down about a mile from the shore. That's great, but you still can't swim. So it's sort of like he's dumped you there, and now it's up to you. Now it's up to the decisions you make and the life you live to see if you can get back to shore on your own. The man becomes responsible for his own salvation. In this option, it's like Christ made it possible for everybody to get saved. It's possible, but it's really up to you. You become the hinge that turns it one way and or the other. In the end, this is the problem we have, even in this option, is that most men still die in their sins. So we have in this second option that Jesus Christ loves the whole world so much that he dies for most of their sins. So the intention at the cross was still for everybody to get to heaven. That's still the intention. He really wants everybody to get saved. But most people we know still aren't saved. So we're right back to the same problem of, has the plan of the cross